What makes you happy?
Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ishmael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or topic that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. In today's episode, I have the great opportunity to talk to Justin Douglas, who is a certified strength coach, a sustainability influencer, and a well-being coach. In this episode, we talk about being aware of your very own strength, the CliftonStrengths assessment, and how you can interpret your own results. We understand that even if you share your talents and strength with somebody else, which the chances are quite slim, you may be a very different character, and you will understand and learn why. We talk about perfectionism and why good enough sometimes is more than sufficient. Justin and I compare our reports, and we discuss what similarities mean and what they do not mean, in fact. We discuss exceptional breakthrough moments that Justin celebrates with his clients, and we go into a deep dive of one strength of mine. We then discuss that actions are worth doing if they are inherently good for their very own sake, and we explain why. And finally, we talk about sustainability, justice, and Justin shares his very personal message with you and the world. And with that, Justin, a warm welcome to the Just Another Mindset podcast. And my first question to you would be, how do you feel today and what is on your mind?
Well, Ishmael, thank you so much, firstly, for inviting me onto the podcast. It's absolutely great to be here. And it's been a special week here as we're recording this right now. Here in the UK, it is our Queen's Platinum Jubilee. That's 70 years on the throne, which is an incredible thing. It's not been achieved before. And there's a really wonderful atmosphere here in the UK. Today, as we're recording, I can hear the rain. But the past couple of days where the big celebrations have been, it's been dry, it's been sunny. And we've heard so many words of inspiration and really powerful meaning. And it's all about service. You know, she's served other people through her whole life. And I think that's great for people to hear. It's great for me to hear because that's part of what I want to do. I want to help people in their lives. And so, yeah, it feels good. It feels good. So it's lovely to be doing this during this special week.
Absolutely wonderful. And we were in our pre-talk comparing a little bit of your week with the weeks that I did experience in Amsterdam around Queen's Day and King's Day. And it's just this very special vibe, I want to call it, right? Everybody's happy, everybody's jolly. As you said, like we're recording this beginning of June. The summer is there, or at least the spring is there. Like everybody's mood is going up. So super nice, super wonderful. And 70 years, I mean, that's quite an accomplishment, I want to call it. And I think that requires a lot of different talents and strength. And this is just exactly what we want to deep dive in today's discussion or conversation. We want to talk about how to analyze your strength, how to find your strength, and why it's important to know your strength. But before we go into detail there, maybe you can share with our audience if there is something like a typical day in your life, if you're not celebrating the Queen's Jubilee, or what keeps you busy, Justin?
Gosh, a typical day in my life. Well, it's quite interesting, and we might get into this later, but one of the talents that I have, and we might talk a little bit more about how we get to this analysis, but one of mine is called adaptability. And seriously, it is extraordinary. I really do feel that no day for me, well, I know it's true, no day is the same for anybody. But I think I have this sort of sense, and for some people this is not a good thing, that in a way I don't plan anything. You know, every day for me is just, it's going to go the way it is. It's going to change, it's going to shape in a different way that I'm not expecting. And I'm okay with that. For some people, they have to plan really carefully. Right, by the end of today, I want to achieve this, this, and this. Or they have a very direct pathway that they're following if they're following a piece of work. It doesn't work like that for me. So it's quite strange, you know. I can be doing, I don't know, it might be, well, like this, a podcast recording. It could be that I'm thinking, right, I need to get ready for a one-to-one coaching with somebody. Or there'll be work to do in preparing for a training course that I might be delivering for a client. And it's just so funny because what happens in a typical day is I might have all 3 or 4 of those things going on. I might have more, I probably will. And I flip between them. So there's a kind of lack of discipline in the approach I take. But it works for me. And that's one of the interesting things about this. And I always reflect. Let me share a little story. I remember when I was employed at IBM, where you and I first met, in fact. But when I was employed there, I remember being younger, sitting in these grand audiences, and so senior people would stand up on a stage and they would be saying, you need to know where you want to be in 5 years. What's your 5-year plan? And I used to sit there thinking, I don't know what my 5-year plan is. Now, at the time, I felt like, this is bad. I don't know my 5-year plan. But now, I realise that was right for me. There were plenty of people sitting to the left and to the right of me that would have been feeling exactly the same. So I would never ask someone what their 5-year plan is, unless that is the type of person they are, that needs to have a plan either for the day or the week or the year. There are many people that do, and that's absolutely fine. But for me personally, and many others, it simply doesn't work like that. And I find that fascinating. I really do. It's almost like corporate structures and systems try and fit us into a way of working and a way of living and a way of being. And I say, I'm not sure that's right. In fact, I know it's not right.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you mentioned a very important point here, that there is so many different characteristics and so many different unique people out there. And the question that comes to mind, Justin, when you talk about that, appreciating your own strength, appreciating your own talents, when did that change for you, that you started to trust your talent and knew that it doesn't matter if it works for anyone else, but as long as it works for you, this is the way to go? When did that happen?
Well, it's very interesting. I go back to 2009 when, again, I was employed at IBM at that time, and I attended what was called the Top Talent Program. You know, it's great, all sorts of learning opportunities, which was fantastic. And we spent, on one of the occasions when we met, I think 4 times a year, on one of the occasions, we went through something called Strengths Finder. It's now called CliftonStrengths, but at that time it was called Strengths Finder. In fact, I have the book. Let me grab it. There we go. So in the back of this book, we all got given a book. In the back was a code that one would cut out, and then you do an online assessment and you get a strengths profile. And at that time, it was good, it was interesting. I thought, oh yeah, great, okay, good, happy with that. And then I moved on and didn't really think any more about it. Fast forward to 2013, January, Stockholm. See, I can remember it so clearly. And it was a brand new training course. By this time, I had joined the internal training department at IBM. And it was a brand new training course that was being delivered. And I was at the back of the room. And I was taking lots and lots of notes because I was learning to deliver this training. So it was like Train the Trainer, but with a live audience. And suddenly, oh my goodness, Ishmael, I had this moment of like, okay, now I understand why I love what I do. Now I understand why I'm so good at it based on feedback. And it was because the strengths profile that I had was so well aligned to the work I was doing. And it was just this fantastic moment. And since that point, 2013, here we are in 2022 recording this. And I suppose I've studied it. I've spent more time on it. In 2015, I studied to become a certified strengths coach with Gallup, who own this product. And yeah, I mean, I've just gained more and more confidence with it. I've practiced it. I've practiced using my strengths and investing in them. And I think it's important to say that these strengths are, they're kind of not learnt, they're inbuilt into us. They are natural ways of thinking, behaving, or feeling. They are inherent. They've been there for years and years. So they're actually quite easy, but we still need to invest. We still need to practice. And what I have found is as I have done that, I've grown more and more in confidence that they will support me no matter what. And I have lots of stories of how that has happened. And it's just magic. I could say it like that. It is just a joy. And anyone listening to this, I would be, I'm not wanting to kind of sell CliftonStrengths on behalf of Gallup. I'm not paid or employed or anything by Gallup. I don't get any commission. But I do want to sell it on the basis that it is just wonderful. It has done so much for me in my life, and it has done so much for millions of other people around the world. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. You can tell I get quite excited about it.
No, absolutely, and I would fully agree. I think the strength profile is something that can really help yourself, understanding yourself, working on yourself, and then using your talents to put them into strength. Maybe we can talk a lot about that in a bit. But for people who may not have heard about the Strength Finder and the Gallup, what is this Strength Finder test about? How long does it take, and what kind of analysis will it give you?
Yeah, well, I think, the first thing to say is that it is not something that we should be trying to shape to how we think we want to be. Whenever you do assessments like this, the most important thing is to do them as naturally as possible. It takes about 35 to 45 minutes. It's available in multiple languages. It's not too expensive. It's kind of around the sort of 20 US dollars, 20 pounds, British pounds, and a similar number of euros for the initial assessment. And I think it's important, really, Ishmael, to also say that this is founded on an incredible level of science. So Donald Clifton was the original strength psychologist that brought this to life, and he spent 40 years researching in the area of strengths. He asked this very simple question. He thought to himself, what would the world be like if we focused on what is right with people rather than what is wrong with people? And isn't that a wonderful thing to hear? I mean, it's just a beautiful statement. And if you think, and many of the people listening to this, if you think about, especially in working environments, how we are often assessed, there's that sense of, well done, ooh, but. And then so much attention is paid on that, ooh, but you need to be better here. Well, this really says, maybe you don't need to be better there. Maybe it's about looking at where your natural talents are and just putting the effort into that. And I can speak from experience. Wow, it makes an incredible difference. So yes, and I know you've done it as well, and you've enjoyed it and seen the value in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what you just said, I think depending on your work environment, it's even if you do excellent work, at some point, people will not even praise you or comment on excellent work, but they will only pick what's not going well, right? And this mindset shift that I tell you, okay, Justin, this was not just good work, this was excellent. I mean, I hired you for excellent, but still you did it so nice. And this acknowledgement is something that's missing in so many jobs and in so many different perspectives on life, right? So I really do believe that focusing on your strength is something that we should do as a society. I mean, we should also be aware of our blind spots. We should also know what we may not be doing. I don't know about myself. I haven't really tried it, but maybe I might not be the best engineer to put together airplanes that flying from A to B, right? Because I'm not trained in it. But if you know what you're good at, and maybe we can dwell in a little bit on that, understanding, and I believe there is a total of 34 strengths, and you get a profile of your top 5/top 10. So now I've done the survey for 35 minutes, and I've answered to 200 some questions, I believe it is. And I do have my report, and it shows me my top 5, my top 10. What do I do with it, and how do I interpret my results?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. The initial report is a top 5. There is a top 10. It's actually done through a slightly different mechanism. There's a manager's version, but you can also get a full 34 profile. You're absolutely right. There are 34 themes of natural talent. They're called themes because they are in essence a grouping of many, many thousands of talents. So if you go for the full profile, which is a bit more expensive, or even if you have the smaller profile and you decide later you'd like to see your full profile, you can buy a digital key that unlocks it. You don't have to do the assessment again. You can just unlock. And so you then get this wonderful report. Let's talk about the full report, where it lines up top to bottom. So you see what's at the top, you see what's in the middle, you see what's at the bottom there. And I think what's so interesting is when you think about that spectrum, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm worried about the things at the bottom," and I think you hinted there earlier when you talked about blind spots. We must remember that there are certain weaknesses, and including these things near the bottom, where we are not strong. Now, I've got extremely excited and passionate about focusing on the strengths here so far. I also want to say that we don't ignore those weaknesses, we just manage them. They only matter if they get in the way of success for the things we are trying to achieve in life or at work. That's the only thing that they matter for. And then the important thing to say is that we don't try to fix them, but we try to look at ways of managing them. So sometimes it might be working with a partner who is much stronger. So for example, for me, most of my strategic themes are quite low in my profile. So I know that I'm not very strategic. So what I do for my own business when I need to be a little more strategic is I'll talk to somebody who is more strategic, who has that strength, rather than going, "Oh, how can I do it? How can I be more strategic?" I think, well, take the pressure off. You know, speak to someone that does understand that language. And it doesn't mean that I am asking them to do it all for me. No. But I might just want 20, 30 minutes just to get me going, get me some ideas, and that can often be enough.
Acknowledge that support can also help you, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, you could do it by yourself, investing 10 days, but
yes.
if you have a good buddy who is in fact very strong in what you are not as strong in,
yes.
why don't you meet for tea or an
Absolutely.
afternoon, a breakout session, whatever you want to call it,
Absolutely.
and just help each other out, right? Because it's likely that you have some strength that he is not having developed as deep as you.
Absolutely. And then another, I'll talk a little more about the report, but another aspect just to talk about managing those weaker areas is looking at what's at the top of your list, and that can compensate. That can compensate so well. And maybe we come to it later, but I have some lovely stories of how that's worked for me. So, you know, there's that element to it. In terms of the actual, the things at the top, let's just focus on that at the moment. Those top strengths in the report you get, whether you buy the full profile or the reduced profile, the top 5, you get a bespoke description of what those are. And that's really, really interesting. It's designed to very much get you thinking, get you acknowledging, I guess acknowledging what those talents are for you and how they may manifest themselves. And it's remarkable, the algorithms that are in action, in the background, must be incredibly complicated because they literally are bespoke. So you can sit side by side with someone that has the same talent as you, and you compare and you go, oh my goodness, they're so different. And it's really quite amusing because I remember sitting beside somebody who also had number 1, maximizer. That's one of them. That's my top one. And I was reading mine and it was like, that is so me. And she was reading hers and it was so her, but they were so different.
Wow. Okay,
it was
because
great.
the other
it was
33 were different and were so different, in fact, that it made a huge difference on the description.
Correct. So it's really, really fascinating. The overall report on the full report is 25 pages, so you get an idea of the depth.
Before we dig a little bit deeper and maybe also take a look at your and my strength report, in fact, you said something a little bit earlier that I wanted to distinguish. Justin, what is the difference between a talent and a strength? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I tell you what, Ishmael, I'm just going to pick up the book here because it's beautifully described. I know it off by heart, but sometimes I like to read from a book. It just kind of alters your tone. So here goes. A talent is a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. I've actually said that earlier today anyway. But a strength, here's the difference. When we take a talent and we invest in it, that's when we get a true strength. A strength is the ability to consistently provide near perfect performance. I love it. I love reading from a book sometimes.
Near perfect performance. That's the definition of the strength. And that is, I believe, because that is the only way you could really evaluate based on inputs, right? So you give your perfect input, because what is a perfect output? Nobody could distinguish what a perfect output is.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And I have to say, I'm quite relieved it's only near perfect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what is perfect? I think we could have another hour of a philosophical discussion about the word perfect and perfectionism.
That's right. And it also reminds us that, it's okay. We will make mistakes, even when I'm working with my strengths really very consciously, things go wrong. It's not always perfect, but it really is, it really helps. And actually that is a good reminder as well, because sometimes our strengths can be so powerful that we overdo them. Okay, we overdo them. And when we overdo them, what happens is that they can cause problems, either for us or for other people or for both.
Absolutely. No, and I think what you stated, it's so interesting and so important to understand that we have those inherited talents, but only if we are, or if we become aware of those talents, we can work on them and make strength out of them. So a lucky shot might be people tell you you're talented in this and this and that, and you find 3 talents yourself and you develop 2 strengths out of it. But if this beautiful report helps you to give you at least 5 talents or even 10 talents, or gives you some areas also to hint at where you should maybe not invest 100 hours or 10,000 hours to master a skill that is not really in your talent profile, I think that's just a great head start for each and everybody, to be fair. And you just pointed something, and this is getting a little bit personal, so you may decide if you leave that or not, but I read through your CliftonStrengths report as well a little bit, and what I also really do like about the report is it gives you your top 5 or your top 10 or your 34 strength, and it evaluates them. And it also gives you a little section on each of those talents / strength that you should be aware of. And you just mentioned perfectionism, and I noted down as one question before our discussion that I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with good enough, and what is your definition of mastery? And I think that just plays in nicely because I read something about that in your report. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, good enough. It's a good one. So you're right. So in my report, you see that I have maximizer at the top, and one of the ways that certainly manifests itself for me is a desire for things to be kind of perfect. It's a good way of thinking of it is good to great, great to excellent. You know, is always another step to go. And I have found that I need to remind myself that that can be exhausting. You know, if you take that too far, it can be absolutely exhausting. And you need to wind back. And I mean, exhausting for me, exhausting for everyone around me. So there is this sense of good enough. So anyone that perhaps feels, whether they've taken this assessment or not, that they are a perfectionist, this is kind of useful information. I'll share a story. So my father was preparing the garden for my brother's wedding. And I came down in the morning and he was mowing the lawn for the second time in less than 24 hours. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing? Well, it's your brother's wedding, you know, you've got to mow the lawn and make it look wonderful. And I'm like, it was good enough yesterday. And it's so funny because I've never forgotten that, because it was kind of a powerful sort of moment for me, and realizing that, yeah, actually we can stop. And so I now have this expression, I call it GE. And I always use it. I use it in training classes. I use it for myself privately. But GE, it means good enough.
Oh, wonderful. So you learned something about good enough yourself, and you always thought like good enough may not exist, and then there you go for your personal example. Thank you so much for sharing.
Exactly. And you had another side to this question.
What is your definition of mastery?
Mastery, that was it. Mastery, yes. I think what I would want to say to everyone listening to this is we're all so different. Everybody is different. I mean, if we take the CliftonStrengths profile as a way of looking at differences, there is a 1 in 33 million chance of having the same top 5 profile in the same order. So, you know, that is a kind of real important reminder that, oh yes, we are beautifully unique. Now, you know, often people say, oh yes, everyone's unique. It's true. What I love about this is we're digging to another level. We're saying everyone is unique in the way they will do everything in their lives. They are unique in the way they will show their true talents, show their true strengths. And what a beautiful blessing that is. Because if we understand more about that, we have the chance to make it work in the most fantastic ways. We have the chance to learn to trust those natural talents that we all have in our own special way. We have the chance to learn to trust them just absolutely. And maybe that is a good definition of mastery. It's to say that we have practiced them, we've made them more finely tuned, we've learned how we can deploy them even better. We've learned a little bit more about knowing when to hold back a bit, the good enough scenario. So I think it's around that. It's this sense of understanding and practice that brings mastery. And yeah, and trust. I mean, when you get to a position where you can literally trust them, it's a fabulous moment. Do we have time, Ishmael, for me to share a story on
Absolutely. All
Great.
the time.
Let me do it. So quite recently, I was doing a one-to-one coaching with somebody. And we both had extra time because there was nothing in our calendar. So we went an extra 15 minutes beyond the time. Great. I stopped the session. Thank you very much. Session ended. Went to my emails and there was a message from Zoom saying, so-and-so is waiting in the Zoom room for you on another link. And I was like, what? Slight panic. Anyway, so I launch it. And what do I see in front of me? 13 people waiting for 15 minutes. Can you imagine that? Yeah. Oh, I was kind of like, oh, a real intake of breath. And I mean, I knew who they were and I was happy to see them, but it was a real shock and panic, this sense of like, adrenaline rush, like, oh my goodness. Now, but here's the story. I was amazed at what then happened. If I wind back 10 years, I would have been in a real state, a real panic, feeling terrible, fumbled all my words, and it would have been just horrible. Instead, something else happened, and it happened in the heat of this moment without me almost realizing until afterwards when I assessed what had happened. It was extraordinary. So what happened was I remember consciously thinking of my CliftonStrengths profile. Consciously. I mean, imagine that. Just in that, you've only got seconds to get going. Consciously switching on. And we'll just run through how it works. So the first one, maximizer, which is all about excellence, quality, all those fantastic, elements of, okay, maybe it is a bit of perfectionism, but it's all about excellence. It's got to be brilliant. So in my mind, I was thinking, right, come on, Justin, maximizer, bang, go for it. You need to bash this out at high quality. It's got to be good. So that was number one. Number two was adaptability. I mentioned that earlier in the podcast. Well, come on. Of course I can cope with things changing on the spot. So again, there was this sense of like adaptability. Come on, Justin, not a problem. You can cope with this. Life happens. Anything happens. It changes. Go for it. So that was number two. Number three was empathy. Not so much on this one, but a little bit of like, okay, these people have been waiting. I need to sort of show the, the apologies side and, acknowledge what it's been like for them. Not quite so important for me at that moment, but I did need it a little. Number four was connectedness. Again, not using that one so much, but it's about, okay, there's a connection to be made, in this whole group of people that were important to me. I like them as a client. But number five, oh yeah, that one was switching on big time. That was communication. And again, very consciously. It was like, right, Justin, you know your topic. It was about strengths. You know your topic. You're a good communicator. You know that because you've had feedback to confirm it. You will find the words, even though you had not prepared. And that, seriously, Ishmael, was how I was thinking. You will find the words. And I did. And it was just incredible. And the client now knows that they've become a serious example in various stories that I've told. And I'll just add one more thing. At the end, after it all finished, I was like, oh, catch my breath, take a moment to reflect. And it was very strange because I thought, again, how would this have been 10 years ago? And I thought, I would have felt terrible. I would have felt miserable, sad, embarrassed, all these negative thoughts. But instead what happened, and this genuinely surprised me, I felt okay. I felt okay. Yes, of course, I was a bit embarrassed and I wrote them a nice note afterwards and they said, no, don't worry, Justin, these things happen. But I felt okay. And that was just really odd. I was like, wow, that was high stress. Yeah, high stress. How does that happen? And I can only sum it up. I thought, wow, that was my strengths being absolutely worked to the max. to mastery, if you like. And also that word trust. I had total trust that they would get me through this difficult situation, and they did. And that was a very powerful experience to go through. So
It
I'm
really
almost...
sounds like...
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It really sounds like a beautiful example.
Yeah,
I've
yes.
heard the definition of mastery is when your strength become basically institutionalized.
Yes.
Or that you don't have to think anymore, but you have to trust. And you just gave the perfect example of how you trusted your own characteristics to take care of a situation that you put yourself into. And it did. And it didn't even stress you too much, but you even felt okay, which is even more a proof for me that you have mastery in yourself. You know yourself so well. You know what you can rely on, what is your talent, probably what is your strength, because you've worked so much on them. So thank you for that beautiful example.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's even me telling the story is just making me think, wow, it's just so extraordinary. And I love your definition that you know, that reflection you've just given. It's hard to describe the feeling, and that really kind of reminds you that it's worth putting effort into this. And you know, and a lot of people might be listening, going, "Oh, yeah, but you know, I want to improve my weaknesses." I get lots of people coming to me saying, "Oh, Justin, but surely, you know, I need to work on the weaknesses." And well, I can tell you from experience, and lots of people, if you think about it, will say the same. When we work on our experiences, there are two things to say. One, it's really hard work. It's really difficult to make them good. And secondly, it's not much fun. It's not enjoyable. Flip it round and work on the strengths. It's easy, much, much easier. And it's enjoyable. That's got to be, it's got to be a good deal in my books.
No, absolutely. No, focus on what you're good at, and then develop that even further. And as you were giving this example earlier, Justin, another question came to my mind, and you talked about the differences. I mean, the chances that our strength profile, the top 5, would be the same as 1 to 33 million. In preparation for our conversation today, I looked a little bit into the 2 of our strength reports, and I found that we share 3 of our top 10. And I just want to read them out real quick. Is the connectedness, and you have it on 4, I have it on 6. We have the relator, you have it on 8, I have it on 5. And we have belief, you have it on 7, and I have it on 9. And my question would be, what does that mean for the 2 of us, and what does that not mean for the 2 of us?
Oh, nice question. Nice question. In terms of what it does mean, I think it definitely means that there will be some common ground between us in some of our, maybe the way to think about it is values. Partly, that will be one of the things. So there'll be 2 elements to this, values and also ways of working. So maybe in terms of connectedness, you know, that might be a good one where we can have that sort of comparison. You know, connectedness for me certainly manifests itself very much in 2 areas. One, that sense of communities and people working together. And I love that sense of team. I love that sense of kind of belonging to a community. And I imagine that's kind of similar for you. Is that fair? Yeah, there we go. There we go. And then my second area is about environmental stuff and planet stuff. So I see my connectedness is really playing out in the area of sustainability. I feel a sense of deep connection to, well, animals, plants, you know, that's sort of the natural world, basically. Now, that might be less strong for you, but I mean, I know you care.
I do care a lot, and I really do love nature as well. So I'm just noting that down in that very moment that we may go into a deep dive a little bit.
Okay, good. Good, excellent. I mean, it's interesting. So, so I guess where it may not be, I think where what we need to remark on is that yes, there are overlaps, and there'll be similarities of values and interests and talents. There will also be differences. So you will easily speak to people for whom connectedness, the nature aspect, which is super strong for me, will be almost not there at all. It's all about people for other people. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the important thing to say is yes, we may see some overlaps, and that's why I'm slightly hesitating, because yes, we will see overlaps, but we have to be careful because they also manifest themselves very differently. So in my maximizer, for example, at number 1, and I shared the example of sitting beside somebody, and because you've read my report, it talks quite a lot about my financial awareness and the financial acumen and wanting value and all this sort of thing. And it's quite funny to read. It's very true. I am very financially astute. But but for the person sitting next to me, probably there was nothing about finance, and for her, finance is probably a nightmare. So it's kind of interesting, and that's why we have to be very careful. So it's quite fun. It's fun to see the same things. In fact, I know. So here's an example. I know someone who's also a certified strengths coach, and in his top 5, 4 of them are the same as me. Not in the same order, but they are there in his profile. And it's quite extraordinary because there's that extraordinary match. It's like, wow, we're like almost strengths twins, almost, but not quite. But we're really different. It's really interesting in style, in how we come across, and in interests. So I think it's an important thing that says that these are very personal. So yes, there are some broad themes, there are broad elements, there are broad descriptions, and I'm going to be brave here, Ishmael, for anyone who's watching the video version of this podcast. So stand by for anyone just listening to the audio. I'm just going to show everybody all the strengths on the wall. Look at them all.
Oh,
there
wow.
we go. Yeah. They're all there. All printed out.
And I suppose that is not something that you only prepared for this podcast because you care about the environment and that is paper printouts, but that is actually something that you have all the time in your office.
It's always been on the wall there for a long time. In fact, they date from 2015 when I was given them as part of the training course to become a certified strengths coach. But my reason for showing them is because as I look at them here, they are giving the broad descriptions which might be similar. So let's take relator, for example. Let's get that one. Hang on. There we go. Here's what it says. This is the broad description. People exceptionally talented in the relator theme enjoy close relationships with others. They find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. Now, you and I, Ishmael, I think we can both relate to that very well. I can see you nodding, and thumbs up. Thumbs up from me as well. Yeah, hands together, totally. So we get that. That's the broad thing. That's the broad statement. You and I have a clear overlap there. Now, if we were to go deep dive and really ask each other more questions about how that works for each of us, that's where the differences start. So I hope that helps our audience kind of understand how, yes, there'll be a broad similarities and, around values and behaviours and interests, but then the deep dive, it starts to kind of diverge.
No, absolutely. And I found that vastly interesting because, as you said, now we have 3 out of our top 10 and they're not in the same order. But you say even with this other strength trainer where you have 4 out of your top 5, which is indeed an exceptional match. But even there, if you put it in the second, third, fourth, whatever layer you want to call it, the more detail you give it, you would still experience quite a few differences. And I found that so interesting, and that loops back to what you were saying in the very beginning, that each and everybody of us, it's such a unique creature and is such a unique human being, right? And it helps to understand, because maybe on an external perspective, you and the other strength trainer, I don't know his name, but they would look to someone very alike. But the more you analyze the two of you, and the more thought you give the two of you, and the more you two know yourself, in fact, you understand, yes, we are similar, but we are very much not the same. And I find that super interesting.
Yeah, I the way I often describe it is we might have the same... we might share a similar, let's say that again. We might share the same talent description, the same strength, but the way it manifests itself will be very different.
The interpretation or a manifestation of something, right? And that also loops back to a thought I had earlier when you were talking about values, because I've also experienced working together with other people or planning to work together with other people. And on the surface, I might just call it for simplicity, it looked like we had the very same values. Or people in self-reflection, self-development, they go through those value, vision exercises and so forth. You come out with a set of values and then you define them. I've done a different podcast where I explain exactly how I personally do that. And again, there's different approaches on how to do that. But on the first or even on the second layer, it looked like Justin and Ishmael have the very same values. But once it comes to the interpretation, what does the value freedom? What does the value financial security? Whatever this value mean to you or mean to I, they can be so vastly different, right? Freedom can mean to you that, I'm just making stuff up, but that you can take 2 days off per month and do something different than your 9 to 5. And that's your definition of freedom. And that's so perfect. I know it's not true for you. But on the other hand, to the other extreme, it could be freedom is really something I don't want to have any boss. I don't want to have any obligation. So the interpretation of the same value can be so different. And so they can, as it sounds like, for our talents and strength. So it makes it even more vital for me to understand what is your strength and what is your manifestation of such.
Yes, and it takes time. When I'm working with people one-to-one or in team-based groups, it's really important that this is something that does take time to get to know ourselves. Let's for a moment, okay, we've been talking about CliftonStrengths, this particular 40 years worth of kind of study wrapped up into a product, so to speak. But let's just put it to one side for a moment and just remember, we don't always need to do an assessment to work these things out. It certainly helps, but let's just think about the beautiful uniqueness of who we are, and we don't need a scientist to tell us that actually, if we stop, we reflect, we think, my goodness, we are so full of incredible differences. The consciousness of those differences, of those wonderful things that we can achieve and that we bring to society, to work, that I think is important. And I think that is something that everybody, whether they want to do, something like CliftonStrengths that helps them, and I truly believe it does, everyone should be investing in thinking about who they are as a person and what makes them special and what they bring to the world. You can hear my value set coming out here, because I truly believe that everybody has a fantastic ability to be something special. And as we're recording this in 2022, and difficult things going on in the world, some really nasty things out there in the world, and I just have these feelings so often. It's like, oh, why can't people just kind of talk to each other and understand each other? You know, not just understand ourselves, but understand others. Because when we understand others, we tend to get on better. And that's magic. And so a lot of my work is around working with teams. You know, if I'm using CliftonStrengths, it's like, wow, now I understand why you're like this. And it helps diffuse some of the problems that happen in communities, in work teams, and so on. And that's a fantastic thing. And let's imagine a world where, all these, people would just kind of understand each other's unique blessings and work hard to make the great qualities that people inherently do possess somewhere, and make those work. I think we'd have a better world if that was the case.
Definitely.
Getting very philosophical here.
No, it's philosophical, but it's very interesting and, in fact, kind of amusing, fun for me when you say that, because what can we bring to the world? And you say, I can hear your value set. In fact, I can hear my own value set speaking from you. And I think this is exactly where we have this overlap, right? I mean, this is partially one of the biggest reasons why I do this podcast, that we learn about ourselves, that we learn about understanding other people, and that we learn about how do we create value, meaning, impact, whatever you want to call it, to a society. And the society might be your village with 13 people, and it might be Tokyo with 30 million, and it might be humanity with 8 billion. You choose your size of your population, right? But eventually it comes down to how can we support each other, and the each other is not really defined. And we can now talk about humans, and we can talk about plants, and we can talk about animals, and we can go into sustainability. But before we go there, Justin, I had another question, and I don't know if you have another 2, 3, whatsoever, and examples you want to share with us. You said you also work together one-on-one with clients. What is particular breakthrough moments that those clients have experienced when working together with you or together with another strength coach? If you want to share something there, that would be super.
Well, I have to surely share one of my most favorite recent stories. So I was working with this client one-to-one, and it was interesting because it was part of his company's program. So it was not like he had chosen to be with me. It was like, oh, you're gonna go and do this, which is not always the best way, I have to say, with coaching. I once was offered coaching as a kind of reward when I was not able to be given a pay rise. And it didn't work very well because I was not open to it. So it can be a problem. But, anyway, I digress a little. But it's an important point that, I think coaching it's a fantastic thing. And, they always say even coaches should have coaches. It really helps us in our lives. And indeed, it does. So I'm with this person, and it started off kind of, a little bit reserved. He was, just not kind of necessarily opening fully. But by the end, I mean, his words were extraordinary. He said, "Justin, I feel euphoric." And I was like, I know. I was like, wow, whoa. I've never had somebody saying that. What is going on here? And he said, well, the thing is, I came into this a little bit nervous, a little bit feeling like, ooh, Justin's going to pick up on those things I am weaker at and say, you need to get better here, you need to get better there. But instead, it was all about, the positive language. It was all about what he was naturally strong at. So this chap, he left absolutely delighted. Well, euphoric was his words. And I've been in touch since, and he's still he said recently, he said to me, I'm all over it, which means he's absolutely, trying to work his strengths as best as he can all the time. I mean, what a fantastic way to leave. You come in feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm worried he's going to go, you need to be better, you need to be better. Instead, it's like he comes out going, I'm loving this. I want to do more of it. I mean, it was a magic moment, in fact, he's given me permission to publish it on LinkedIn, so you'll see a quote somewhere in my profile coming soon.
Wonderful, absolutely. And you shall be acknowledged for that change of perspective. I just want to.
I think so. I think that that's just lovely. So that's a recent story, and then I'll share maybe just another couple, one or two, but I might package them into one, and that's more around those moments of breakthrough. Working with people and they suddenly feel a leap of confidence. I work a lot with people that are sometimes stuck in their careers, kind of stuck in their path. Which journey are they choosing? They feel maybe sad, not satisfied. And when you make a breakthrough there, when you see them suddenly realizing what strengths can do for them, for example, or just even putting strengths aside, just that moment of breakthrough of like, yeah, you know what, I'm okay. I have got choices. I can move forward now. That's special. That's special. It really is. And it really drives so much of what I do. It's a very it can be quite an emotional thing, especially with me in my profile number 3, empathy. So, I can feel it. I can feel that sense of like, wow, this is important. And it's really interesting, Ishmael, one-to-one compared to groups. I love working with groups. It's terrific fun, lots of energy. Probably people can hear in my voice, and if you're watching the visual version, you can see me. My arms are flying around. This is when you've been in the classroom with me, so you know what I'm like, don't you, Ishmael? It's all about energy, but and I love it. But one-to-one, it's a different experience because you get intimate. You get the small things that really are troubling people or that really matter. That's really special, really special. But it's funny, actually. I'm reminded of training events when I was working full-time for IBM, and sometimes you would get people coming up to me at some point, and maybe they've got some issue at work in their line management or something, and they often would pick me to speak to because they felt I would have that empathetic understanding. Those were special moments as well. And, if I can help, then I'm happy.
No, and you do. And I mean, in fact, this is one of the reasons why we are having this conversation. I mean, we met quite a few years back, as you stated, for our old employers. And you striked me as a person of mastery and of energy and of charisma and all that coming together. I was like, okay, at some point I must speak to Justin, because you have those wonderful strengths and you have the ability to share, to communicate about them, and to help other people with your maximizer talent to work on them themselves, right? And that is true for group settings, and that is true also for individual one-on-one settings. I mean, we didn't really work together in depth on my strength, on your strength yet, but I could very well imagine why people would pick you exactly, because you have this beautiful set of strength. And when you talk about those breakthroughs, I think, again, what you brought up is this trusting yourself and understanding yourself that you are capable of doing whatever it is, right? And if it may require a change in job or a change of environment or a change of whatever may be, that you then have the capability to also trust yourself that you are good to go and good to change something around it. And I may use a few minutes of very personal interest, because if I look at my strength report, my second biggest strength is self-assurance. And I've talked to strength coaches before about it, but this is exactly this self-trust. I'm not worried about where this path is going at all. And the path, I mean the path of life. But do you have a few words for me, maybe on this general perspective, what does self-assurance mean to you? And is it something, that one should inherit and work on?
It's a really interesting one. And, out of the millions of people that have taken the assessment, it's one of the rarer talents to be near the top. So it is interesting. I'm going to read out the high level definition of it for our audience here. So here we go. Self-assurance. People exceptionally talented in the self-assurance theme feel confident in their ability to manage their own lives. They possess an inner compass that gives them confidence that their decisions are right. And for me, it fits you so well. It fits you so well. And I must share with the audience, the moment when you connected with me to invite me, I think you wrote some words like, do you remember me, Justin, or something like this? And I was like, yes, I do. I totally remembered Ishmael. So, the audience listening, when I first met Ishmael, he absolutely shone in terms, I think, self-assurance. Actually, there was that. There's that kind of that confidence that you're not doubting yourself. There's that, it comes across, and it's strange because you're absolutely right, Ishmael. I've met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in training events, and I do not remember them all. I think it would be impossible to, really. But some people I see, maybe they appear in LinkedIn and I don't even recognize them. And it's weird. But with you, it's like, totally, So I think it's as I say, it's quite rare for people to have this self-assurance talent high up in their list. But for those people that do, that compass, that help in finding your direction really comes across, and it really comes across with you. I really get that so strongly. That sort of element of like, look at the way you left IBM, our former employer. You chose a new pathway. You've been adventurous. You're doing these podcasts. You've lived in all sorts of different places over the past year or so. But what's interesting for me is the way I sense it, the way you've done it. It has this sense of kind of absolute, like you know what you're doing. It's hard to describe for our listeners, but it's there. We could call it confidence. I love the word compass. It's like you just take the path, and it feels good. And it really comes across when I went up the things I've read from you, and even just talking with you. It was very funny. We mentioned values earlier and our overlap, but there is a clear overlap between us in style, in values. Before we got going on this podcast, dear listeners, Ishmael and I were speaking for 25 minutes, chatting. It's funny, isn't it? It's really interesting.
It really is. And
I get the sense you love your self-assurance.
Absolutely. And I think I trust it, right? So thank you so much for the flowers, B, for this analysis, and also 3, for pointing out where I may improve that or may use that, right? And as you said, there is good opportunity to make use of your own talents and strength, and this is something...
I think so. And I think, one thing I would offer to you is to think about how you deploy that self-assurance when you're working with others, when you're doing these wonderful podcasts, and how you help others, because I know that's what your mission, that's what you want to do. The thing you'll need to be careful about is remembering that lots of people do not have that self-assurance. That will be critical for you, and it's the same for me. I take
that as a remark.
You know what I mean?
And we may go for a round 2 in a year or so, and then we analyze how it worked and how I actually put that into play.
But it's a beautiful gift. You can lead people with self-assurance. It's one of the, it's got one of the I think we should tell people there are four domains. Self-assurance sits in the influencing domain. Okay, and just for reference for everyone, the other two are strategic thinking. Other three: strategic thinking, relationship building, and executing, which is the one of getting things done, basically. So yeah, so self-assurance is an amazing one for influencing, leading people in certain directions, carrying people with you. And I think, you know, with when you marry that to some of the other talents, you can do that with care. That's the key, with care for others. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that in-depth analysis and explanation on this one particular talent. And Justin, before we continue looking into some questions that I ask each and every of my guests, I'm looking a little bit at the time, is we talked about sustainability and we talked about the importance of such in your life. My audience knows about the importance of such in my life already, but what is sustainability for you and why is it so important in your life?
Yeah, it's, for me, sustainability really, basically, I have quite a strange, I think slightly unusual view. A lot of people will come at it at the angle of, you know, sustainability means that humans can live, you know, on and on for, well, forever might be a bit strong, but in a way that means that the future generations can live without, you know, threat and strife and difficulty. So we're looking for a pathway that allows humans to live in a as best they can in a happy way that's not too distressed by the state of the planet in terms of environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. And the one thing that I'm very conscious of, and I think this will be a serious manifestation of sustainability collapse, would be if we start to see massive migration. So from a climate change perspective, you know, we're talking about not the 1.5 degree rise or the 2 degree rise. Yes, that might be the average, but we all have to remember that that is an average. And when you go for that kind of level of increase as an average, you're talking 4, 5, 6 degree rises in the tropical region. That equals crop failures, that equals starvation, etc., etc. That is not a place we want to be. So sustainability for me is avoiding all of that. But, and this is the side that I have a slight, I sort of wonder if I'm a bit more unusual on this one, and that is the thing that really, really, really gets me, and I've tried to work it back to one word. There's a word that I use that is the one that really gets me upset in everything in life, and that is the word injustice. And when I think of the natural world, injustice, for me, is the effect on animals. Let's take an example of something that everyone can kind of probably relate to quite easily. Orangutans. Why should they lose their home? Orangutans are probably, you know, incredibly, well, we know that they are very close to us in, you know,
98% or something?
Something like this. Yeah, something like this. What this tells me is that they are sentient beings with emotions. You know, they will feel sadness and suffering and all this sort of thing. The injustice for me is through no fault of their own, they have their home destroyed. And injustice for me is probably the word that sums up where I get really upset. And so I have this sort of sense that animals deserve their place in the world as much as we do. In fact, dare I say it, I feel that they deserve it more than we do, because they're not going around wrecking it. So I have this very, this is kind of a strange thing to be saying on a podcast, but I almost have this sense that we humans, as a species, do not really deserve our place on the planet. And if someone said to me, what would you think of a world where the humans had gone and the animals were left there? And this will be hard for some people to listen to, but I think I would be happy with that, because I think we're doing such a bad job. Now, that sounds all very negative. And so, I like to turn this around, because some people will say, and this is a common problem. A lot of people are suffering eco-anxiety and feel like that they cannot do anything. It's very easy to get into that position. But I do turn that around. I do say, you know what? It is worth trying. It is worth trying, and I'll tell you why. Because even if in the long run we lose the battle, if you like, if we want to call it that, if we find that there are big extinctions, either in animal species or humans, it's still worth us making a massive effort. It's still worth us doing good things. Why? I'll tell you why. For one simple reason, that to do anything good, whatever it might be, is, in my view, worth doing simply for its inherent goodness. And I love that. And that keeps me going. That tells me, yes, it is worth, trying to do those small things that we might do every day, picking up litter, recycling, reducing our usage of plastics, reducing our usage of fuel, reducing our flying, or whatever we choose. These things are inherently good, but also the actions we might take directly towards wildlife. Maybe we go and help plant some trees. Maybe we go and volunteer at a local, animal rescue place, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. All of those things that are philosophically good, I want to say it like that, philosophically inherently good, are worth doing. And that's a lovely thing. That I think is what it takes to be human, actually, is that ability to say, you know what, this is a good thing that I'm doing. This is helping people, or it's helping animals, or it's helping wildlife, or it's helping communities. If it's doing that in a positive, good way, let's do it.
I love it.
What do you think of it? Yeah, you love it.
I love it so much, Justin. And I want to just acknowledge you one more time. I mean, I've acknowledged you earlier for helping other people finding their talents and their strength, and being a guiding hand for so many people. But also for what you just said. I think what's inherently good is worth doing. And if there is a good intention behind something, it is also worth doing. And this is, in fact, exactly what you just described. Something I tell a lot of naysayers. They say, yeah, but if we do this, it's only 3% of the problem. Well, it's still 3%. It doesn't matter what the metrics may be, right? If you feel like you're striving, if you can motivate yourself, if this is a topic that burns your heart, how awesome is that? Go sit behind, walk behind, run behind, whatever it may be, and work on it. And if somebody says it's not worth it because they're building the new plant next door, it doesn't matter. Just keep on doing. I mean, of course, you can consult with friends left and right. Is this the right activity to put your energy into? But if this is something that keeps you going, please go ahead. And this is something for each and every listener out there. Please do the activities that feel good and that are inherently good. So that was the perfect summary, the perfect explanation of sustainability, and how we can also enrich ourselves as a society, right? So if you say, a planet without humanity would maybe be better for the planet and all the other organisms living on this planet, that might be a true statement. But if there is also ways that individuals like you, like I, like so many other people out there, and luckily, they're getting a much bigger voice over the past 10, 20 years, then there is ways to counter certain measures, and there is ways to do so much good and so much positivity, and each and everybody can find something that gets them going, that gets them optimistic about something. And please do find those activities, and please do pursue those activities. Wonderful.
Absolutely. You're so right, Ishmael. And I think, you're right. Some people say, oh, is this the best way? You mentioned that, but actually, that can be hard to work out. It can be hard to measure. So you're right. Choose those things that you enjoy. That, again, if we take a strengths-based approach, choose the things you're good at. Yeah. You said it so well. You invite everyone to, get involved. Do these things that make a difference.
And I do invite everybody, and I think they all can take a good example of yourself. And again, I think there is so many topics and themes that we can take for a part 2, a part 3, a part 13 whatsoever, and talk about sustainability projects or things that you are up to in that regard. And I would love to do that. And just before, I have a few questions that I ask each and every of my guests. Whether I'm an organization or an individual listening to the podcast, and I'm sure there's quite a few people who want to get to know more about yourself, where do they find you? Where are you most active, and how can people reach out to you?
The best way to reach me is LinkedIn. It's just, really, really... It's my favorite in terms of all those external channels. And it's quite easy to search. If you search Justin Douglas, and maybe you just put in trainer or something, or certified strengths coach, it comes up.
Absolutely. And I will, of course, also make sure to link it to the speaker notes of this episode. So just search through there. You will have all the links to Justin's website, LinkedIn, and so forth. Wonderful. Justin, my first question for you would be, what motivated and influenced you over the past week?
Oh, well, I mentioned the Platinum Jubilee, a very special week. And I'm going to say it. So Her Majesty the Queen has definitely influenced me this week. Her just sense of absolute duty and service to her country for, well, actually, as a good friend of mine pointed out, more than 70 years, because she started her royal work before she was crowned. So it's been a lot longer. I mean, can you imagine being aged 96 and still working? So for me, that is a total inspiration. It's made me really, it's surprising actually. It has made me really think, yes, come on, Justin, keep doing good things. We mentioned it a moment ago. Keep doing good things for people. Keep doing good things for the environment and the planet. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. What a week to be doing this podcast recording.
Wonderful. I love that. And without talking too much about my inner motivation, but when you mention it, she's 96. My grandma is 94 and probably one of the most inspiring people on this planet as well. She's not working anymore, but there is older people, I just call it, who are so inspiring, right?
Yes.
And if that motivated and influenced you, big thumbs up to the Queen this week.
Absolutely. And the older generations, they have so much wisdom to offer. It's just fabulous. Really is.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I love that, Justin. The second question of mine is, who are your personal mentors and whom do you look up to?
Oh, gosh. Oh, I like that one. Well, I'm going to call out a wonderful certified strengths coach called Hannah Miller. She's one of my friends. We studied together, and we do some projects together as well. But she's definitely... She has a totally different... Well, not a totally different strengths profile, but she has one element called woo, which is kind of about wooing people or winning others over. And she's just a master at it. And so it always inspires me. It always inspires me, she's a lovely person. And I love working with her. So, this isn't someone famous, but she's doing fantastic things for her family, for the people she works with in communities. and her clients as well. So yeah, she's a good mentor as well. So we use each other as a kind of to help each other in terms of mentoring and coaching. So that's my choice.
Wonderful, and I love it. And I think, as you just explained it can be a role model, and it doesn't have to be a super famous person, or doesn't have to be anyone in particular. But that's super interesting. So also,
I can mention a famous person if you want, but it's up to you.
Go ahead if you feel like.
Oh, okay. Well, it won't be a surprise to people, but I've always been a massive fan of Barack Obama. I mean, lots of people will say the same, I know, but the fact that we do choose him must say something special about how he inspires people with his speeches and so on. So
very inspiring character.
Yes, he is. Wonderful. But yeah, wonderful.
Okay, and then my third and final question, and that's a little bit hypothetical, but how about you imagine yourself traveling in space, and you are traveling for quite some time, a couple of months, maybe even a couple of years. And after a long time, you encounter a human-like species. And I call this question the three truths, because this human-like species can only process three facts or truths about humanity before they decide whether or not they want to get to know us. What do you tell them?
Wow. I love this question. I also rather like the fact you did not warn me. In some podcasts, things are very pre-prepared, but this isn't. I'm loving it. Well, Ishmael, what on earth am I going to say? Well, the first thing I want to say, I have to say it just because it's true. I love space. In fact, that's a strange thought. And okay, I'm going to digress here. But I have found space to be a really interesting piece of inspiration for me. I have found it incredibly helpful in me coping with the challenges that we're seeing in the planet at the moment. Both, the awful war in Ukraine as we're recording this, and also climate change and so on. I found it an incredible source of comfort because it is so vast, so fascinating, so just incredible, and gives a sense of perspective. So yeah, I adore space. So thank you for bringing this wonderful image to me, because I was like, oh my goodness, I'm traveling through space and suddenly I meet a new being out there. Wow. Thank you, Ishmael. So what would I say? The three truths. Well, I think I would want to. I think I would have to. I mean, I'm a positive person generally, but I would want to be honest. So I would say that human beings have this remarkable and beautiful capacity for immense good. I would have to say that. I would also have to warn them that some human beings have an immense capacity for terrible things. I would want to say that the good things outweigh the terrible things. And in fact, I would be hoping maybe to invite this species, these beings, to visit us, to help us maybe maximize that sense of good, that ability to deliver and bring about wonderful things in our world. That's what I would be saying. So I think that's sort of kind of two truths there. So a third truth I would want to say is around the area of differences. So I would want to be saying, if you come to our planet, you will meet an extraordinary variety within our one species. You will find this incredible variation of passions, interests, love, diversity, shapes, sizes, everything really. I would want to be telling them about that. I think it's important that they know this.
No, absolutely. And I love it so much. As you said, there is a lot of differences, there is a lot of individuality, and in the end, we may stay positive and say that the good outweighs the terrible and the bad. And with that, Justin, I thank you so much. And I can again hear that you are the maximizer of humanity. So let's get even more people on board and work on stuff for our humanity. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Just Another Mindset podcast. And the last words are for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Ishmael, thank you so much for inviting me. It has been a massive pleasure being with you. Yeah, a real thrill. You and I think we get on well, even though we don't know each other that well. There's that real connection, and that's a lovely thing. So thank you so much, and I really hope that the listeners out there will take some useful things from this and have enjoyed it as much as we have enjoyed talking.
I'm sure they do. Justin, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
If you enjoy and learn from the Just Another Mindset podcast, please make sure to share this episode with a friend or two and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And if you want to receive a brief overview of what made me think over the past week and join like-minded individuals, you may want to sign up to my weekly newsletter. It is easy to sign up. It is super easy to unsubscribe again. You will get information on the newest podcast episode, and you will also get an overview of the content, books, and podcasts mainly, that I am consuming, and I evaluate what I've learned over the past week. You will also get your weekly dose of optimism, because you will receive the Smile News with 7 things that went right this week. And finally, you will get access to all my speaker notes that you can use to follow exercises and answer questions discussed in the podcast. Just follow the link in my bio to sign up for my newsletter, and I'm already excited to see you on the other side. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a mail directly to contact@ishmaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.
Do more of what makes you happy. Be yourself. Positive. Change. Just another mindset.